Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of PitchUs. We are excited to be joined by Tyler Sumner of TRANZIT. My name is Tim Cooley. I'm the author of the Pitch Deck book, and joined with me is Jeff Erickson. Jeff, please introduce yourself.
Jeff Erickson with Forecaster. We make financial modeling easy for founders. So super excited to be on this episode of Pitch Us and to have Tyler join us. So Tyler, I think you can go ahead and pitch us.
All righty. My name's Tyler Sumner. I'm the founder and CEO of TRANZIT. Over the last 16 years, I have been a consultant and ran a consulting and fleet management firm that's helped companies prolong the life of their assets, their vehicles, as well as reduce their operating costs and help them make strategic business decisions with one of the biggest assets of their company, and that's their fleet, whether it's been from light duty vehicles all the way up to large tractor trailers, 18-wheelers on the road. During that time, I've found that there's some huge issues in the industry, especially with these economic changes, with whether it be fluctuating fuel cost as well as repair costs are going up. Parts are very difficult to find with the supply chain, as well as many companies are still relying on spreadsheets and to manage and understand their cost. And it's just the spreadsheets don't cut it anymore. The other difficulty that they have is staying compliant with the Department of Transportation and ahead of their maintenance and repairs. This is a key factor, especially in today's industry where it's very difficult to find vehicle replacements. Our platform helps prolong the life of those vehicles while reducing all of these costs. Many companies approach it today with a hybrid approach, whether that be through GPS and telematics software, as well as spreadsheets like I've mentioned. And what we're providing to the industry is a one-stop shop that will help manage and pull together all of their data. So currently in the market, there's many GPS and telematics companies. These tailor, again, more towards just the GPS and those types of analytics, driver compliance and those things. There are some asset and supply chain or management companies that are again, they're more asset management, and they try to stamp themselves as a fleet management company. But we're finding that a lot of companies, because there aren't many options out there for this, either just fly by the seat of their pants, or they look to the logistics transport companies. And for those that can afford it and pay a higher premium, they might go to a full service lease program, which is like the Riders and Penske's that you see out there. So our platform will put the tools back into their hands, as well as integrate all of the needs that they have onto one single platform. Our solution starts with a driver and works all the way up to the executives of the company, or the C-suite, through the different processes. Such as here, we start with our driver app. A driver such as Larry here can scan into his vehicle, perform a daily vehicle inspection report as mandated by the Department of Transportation. Through this 26-point inspection, if there's any violations or issues that he finds on his vehicle from the app, he'll be able to submit a repair order, as well as track the fueling and odometer, which helps update the maintenance schedules on those vehicles and stay compliant there. Within our user portals, a fleet manager can receive those repair requests and approve those, plan preventative maintenance schedules, track each individual vehicle and each dollar and cent that goes into that vehicle, as well as the various other costs such as fuel and those types of things. For companies that have an internal shop, it can then go into their mechanic portal that they can order parts and assign to specific repair orders, close those repair orders, and track warranties and costs that way. We also have solutions for companies that don't have internal shops that can input all of that data from the external mechanics that are performing repairs on their fleet. All of that data filters back into our dashboards that then provides actionable insights, whether that be to a fleet manager, a regional manager, all the way to the C-suite team. When we first developed our proprietary software with my consulting firm before launching the multi-tenant software with TRANZIT, about 15 years ago, I got with one of our clients who currently still sits on the platform. He's the CEO of a Berkshire Hathaway company. He's a CPA by background. So dollars and cents mean everything to him in helping him make educated decisions for his company. And because of the reports and the reliable data that we've been able to provide to him through this platform, he's been able to, like I said, extend the life, know the sweet spot when it's good money after bad to cycle their fleet, as well as we've been able to save them over millions of dollars on their fleet operations. Earlier this year, we launched our MVP, the multi-tenant platform for enterprise customers. We are currently under development for APIs or integrations with the GPS and telematics companies. We plan to have those done by the end of the fourth quarter. And in first quarter of 2023, we plan to launch our driver and owner operator app. Our pricing structure is based per unit per month. If paid on an annual basis, it's $8 for a powered unit, which is any vehicle powering down the road, and $6 for a contributor. That could be a trailer, a warehouse piece of equipment, forklift, anything like that. There's also a monthly option if paid monthly. It also includes unlimited users, so it's strictly by vehicle or the amount of units they have in the system. The market size in the United States or North America, I should say, is currently that TRANZIT would be able to target is over 300 million units that are registered with the Department of Transportation. Now imagine if we were to just go after 1% of that industry. That would equate to ARR of over 290 million. With just 1% of what's registered on the Department of Transportation. That's just the enterprise revenue stream. What we plan to launch with that owner or with that driver app is the owner operator revenue stream. So it'll benefit not only the enterprise, but then we open up to this owner operator. Owner operators are those forgotten road warriors. I'm sure you guys have seen the Amazon trailers driving down the freeway. I'll tell you right now, those are not being pulled by an Amazon truck. Those are independent contractors, these owner operators. This is a forgotten about market. We have done our research and have found that there is nothing out there that will provide these guys with a solution that is giving them the same tools that the enterprise customers have, but also helping them track and stay DOT compliant. Currently, they rely on, when I've talked to owner operators, I've heard it many times, like when I've asked them what software they're using, or if there is a software, they say, well, if you mean my highlighter and paper, that's my software. With that, we'll be able to provide them with data points such as their cost per mile and their cost per load. When they better understand that, they'll better be able to understand and bid out their loads, which will give them the opportunity to put more money in their pocket and provide that benefit to them. Our pricing platform is packaged, again, as an annual monthly subscription, $25 if paid annually per month, or $35 if it's a month-to-month subscription. Currently, there's just under 680,000 owner-operators on the market in North America, or I'm sorry, that's the United States alone. And with no software out there for them, we are targeting at least 25% of the industry. which would equate to $51 million in ARR with just that one revenue stream. Our dedicated team, Jared Mon is our CEO or COO, and co-founder. He has been in the technology and business operations realm for about 10 years. Scott Wallace is our CTO. He has developed many software and enterprise platforms and has been in the industry for 20 years. Corey Lorenz is a financial and strategic advisor, as well as with strategic with partnerships. And I've already introduced myself. Current projections for 2022, the ARR is at just under 236,000. We have spent just about 100,000 in development, and we plan to put about another 100,000 before the end of the year into development. With 2023, it opens up not only the enterprise platform more with those integrations and telematics companies that are very important, but it also opens up that owner-operator revenue stream, which will then skyrocket our sales as projected. So in 2022, like I said, we took a $100,000 loan, which gave us the ability to test and launch our MVP, give us an ARR of 236,000. Our average monthly burn, again, our development isn't equated in that, but we've been bootstrapping, and we're just under a monthly burn of $8,000 a month. All of those funds went strictly to development. Some highlights: we were one of the top 10 finalists on Start Madness, or that got to pitch at Start Madness. Recently was an honorary guest at the 2022 NATEM conference, which is a large corporation that involved many Berkshire Hathaway companies. Tonight we're on PitchUs podcast in 2023. So our ask is we're trying to raise $1 million safe, which will be used to finish out our integrations with the GPS and telematics, our driver and owner operator app, which gives us a projection of 2.2 million by the end of 2023 in ARR. And we plan to use those funds primarily for building out our sales team and development.
Okay, awesome. Good job, Tyler.
Yeah, great job. Super interesting. So here's what we love to do is we start with positive. Jeff, what are some of the things you really liked about the presentation?
Okay, so first off, I love the way you started out with telling us, your background, established you as an expert in the industry. I thought that was really powerful and helpful. And then I liked how you went through the problem. I think it was easy to understand kind of where that was at, what the challenges were, and honestly, the market size is huge. So I thought you did a great job, explaining all of that. It was interesting because you kind of went through, the product and the solution. Then you kind of went through your product and how it all fits together and the pricing and everything. And then you kind of surprised us and said, oh, and then also there's this other segment. And I actually thought that worked because I was like, okay, that's cool. And then you had this other segment. It's like, okay, and here's how that works with the owner operator model. Didn't really see that coming. But I like how you have those two segments, and then that fit in really nicely with your financial projections. I have to tell you, I thought I've seen so many of these pitches where I thought you were going to wrap things up and go straight to your ask before you went into your financials. And I had this big, mark like traction. And do you have any traction? You mentioned this one client that was using it and they love it and all this. And it's like, I'm not seeing this anywhere. And then you got to your financials. I'm like, oh, you do have traction. And so I was like pleasantly surprised that, that was there. And I thought you did a great job there. That's honestly what probably, captured my attention the most, is as you started to get into, here's what we've accomplished already. Here's what we've already gotten, $230,000 of ARR. That was great. So I thought that was impressive. I actually like the sector that you're going in, the expertise you bring to it. I didn't get a feel for your team. I mean, we can go into some of those things, but I'll just leave it there for some of the positives, because I thought you did a really good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I totally agree. I think there's some great things here. I love the beginning. I will say I think that you can add to that and get it much more powerful, but I'm glad that it was there and it started off that way. I also am just going to throw out a plug. I loved how you end with your ask slide. Jeff knows this is like one of my personal things, so thank you for doing that. I also really loved your financial slide once we got there. Super easy to read. The stacked bar graphs make us understand where the revenue's coming from. I didn't understand what the curved line meant, but otherwise everything else was awesome for me. But yeah, I mean, to me, this is one of those ones where I just think reordering some stuff and then really focusing in some certain areas will really help change the presentation as a whole. But otherwise, like Jeff said, a lot of the stuff you had was great. Now I think we can make it even that much better. So Jeff, why don't you tell us some areas where we can make some improvements?
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm gonna hit first on what Tim mentioned about the financial slide. Totally agree. I love how you set it up. I didn't, like Tim said, I was curious what the black line was, if that's number of customers, because that's what I was looking for. How many customers are we talking about? And I could probably easily just back into it with some little math, but I wanted to see, how many customers do you have today? Where's that going, next year? And then as you start to roll out your owner operator, revenue, how many customers are we talking about? How are you going to get there? And what does $1 million get you in terms of, is it this bringing on salespeople to get this number of customers? That's kind of what I wanted to get a better feel for. I'd probably go back in and probably do some of the math on it anyways, but that's something I think you could just make more clear. The other thing is on your market slide. I mean, it looks like a huge market because, I mean, you can capture 1% of the enterprise side of things here. And I get that. As you were going through that, it was before we got into any of the traction. And I'm like, okay, that's great that you want 1% of the market, but I really didn't get a feel for how reasonable that is. Who are you up against, and what are the alternatives here that you're going up against directly? So is 1% of the market actually reasonable? It looks like the point I got from your market slide was this is a significant opportunity. And honestly, that's what you want to get across anyways. But that did raise a question. I'm like, how in the world are they going to get to 1%? Because you see it all the time. It's like, oh, we just need 1% to make this a huge business.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, do you even have anything yet? Do people even want this? Is 1% realistic? And I think some of that was answered in the traction slides and when you got to your financials. The other thing you mentioned was when you said you're raising $1 million. You said we're trying to raise, and I'd say just go straight to we're raising $1 million, and this is here's the progress we've made on it so far. I don't know if you've had anything soft circled, but that's always super helpful to say, no, you're not the first one that's going to write us a check. We've got, 3 other investors that, have, committed or whatever it is. And maybe that's not the case, but once you do that, that does help with your presentation, obviously. Other than that, I was going to mention your team slide. So I don't know that we dug enough into the team to get me a good feel for this is the team that's going to take this across the finish line. And so I just kind of maybe work on that. What are the backgrounds? Why is this the team? I got a good feel of that for you up front, but not so much on your team. And I wanted to come out of this with, okay, this is a rock star team. They get this industry. They've done this and this and this in it, and this is why they are set up to crush this. So, and that may be the case. I don't know that it came across for me that way, anyways. Other than that, I thought it was a great points in your presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. That's really good.
Awesome. Yeah, Jeff hit on a lot of good areas here. It's always hard to go second. That's why I make Jeff go first. He gets the hard work. Yeah. But a couple things that I think that Jeff hit on is, and I think we talked about a little bit earlier, is I think you need to accent some very important points. You talked about yourself at the beginning, right? And when you got to your team, it didn't have the same type of charisma. And I think that's what Jeff's kind of saying. It's like, look, I did 16 years in this industry. I know what they need. I also hired 2 people who have been doing this alongside with me for X amount. And that's like, oh, okay, I get why those 2 people are part of this company. And it just, you said the words, but it wasn't like, I don't know. It just didn't give us that feel like this is the right team to crush it. And I think that that's an easy thing to just get excited about.
Okay.
A couple things here, and I'm going to go back to the market side. Well, let me go back to the very beginning. I didn't really understand the problem in the way that you presented it. So you broke it down into 4 sections. And then this is what happens a lot of times is someone will start talking about the problem and then say and then we're going to fix that. And then they go back to the problem and then they start talking a little bit more about the problem. And you did that when you went all the way down to, it was 3/4 of the way through the presentation. And then you talked about this owner operator model, right? And so if we're going to talk about enterprise or owner operator, and both of these are great business models, think about it. And I don't know the right answer right now, but maybe it might be worth focusing on one or the other for this type of presentation, knowing that you can go into the enterprise later or knowing you can do the owner operator later. And a lot of that has to do more with our focus, right? If you're introducing all the problems for an enterprise client who has huge budgets, right? It's well, how are you going to get to 1%? This is probably fairly competitive. You got to outline a little bit more of what one client might look like. They're not just one car. It's going to be 1,000 vehicles, right? And so that financial model might look a little bit different, where if it is owner operator, then it might be 1 or 2 or 3 vehicles. I don't know the answer here. But it does help us just kind of stay with you from a problem solution point of view and then right into that finances. Does that make sense? It's not that it wasn't there. It's just it kind of came in and out when I'm trying to follow along in the story.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Fair enough. Yeah, definitely.
Let me think here. Okay. So I love that you guys took out a loan. Honestly, I think that's a great way to start businesses sometimes. But one thing that I will add to that is you should have an entire section on traction, right? So we took out a $100,000 loan. It got us to this point. We launched our MVP. We've got 5 clients, but really highlight that one section because this is a really great pitch of I don't believe you until you hit traction. Once you get to that traction thing, then I'm it adds just such a ton of value for what I'm listening for. And that just you glanced over it in the ask slide. And that was the very, very last slide, right? You're we've made $200,000. And you're oh, okay. Right. And question, is that enterprise or is that fleet owners? Or I mean, is that owner?
That's all enterprise at this point. Yeah.
Okay.
Until we have that mobile app, it won't be able to go into the owner operators.
Okay, makes sense. So what you could do is start the presentation off with just the enterprise, right? Again, you have to play around with this, and I'd have to hear it again, but and then say, look, we're going to be in Q4 or whatever next year, launching our owner operator model that has this revenue stream, and you can bring that in just a simple finance slide. Does that make sense? So
yeah, definitely.
But you built it for these people, but there's also a use case here. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, Tim, what do you think about a timeline here where, here's what we've accomplished? That's what I kind of heard you saying, but some type of timeline, here's where we took out a loan. Here's some of the milestones we've hit along the way. I think that would help us see that traction that you're getting or that you've gotten already. And then kind of extend that timeline now into the future, saying, and here's our next milestones and here's some inflection points there. And I think that will help, and one of those milestones is we're launching our, owner operator module here or the web app or the mobile app. And you can kind of, now you can get a good picture of where this thing's going and some of these milestones you're going to hit with the funding.
Yeah, totally agree. And then another thing that to help you with the balancing that problem solution. So your problems were like the driver app itself. I think if you would have broken apart your problem statements into the drivers have these problems, your user portal, whatever the opposite of that is, has these problems. And then the mechanics or whatever have these problems. And then you can really reconnect all this back to connect your solution back to those problems if you break them out. You kind of did it with like 4, I'm going to call it a season chart in a lot of ways, right? Like, I don't know the right word for it, but you had like these 4 things, but they were all lumped into one. And I think that's a little bit hard to read. The other thing is your first slide had really small text. So just kind of make that a little bit bigger or highlight some key areas to point out, like just bold them or underline them or something. Because we're reading along with you. And so as long as you're talking, so if you shorten it or make it bigger, it just makes it easier to follow. I loved how you end with an ask slide. But what I would recommend removing the 2022 and just focus it on the ask. In your communication, you're going to bring up your traction a little bit. So we've previously acquired 100K. We did these things. Now we're looking to raise 100 million of that, of a million of that money. This much is closed. Here's the terms, and here's the milestones and how we're going to use that funding. And wrapping that all up in one area is just a beautiful way to end. Other than that, I think that's my feedback at the moment. Like I said, I think all the pieces were there. They just got to be tweaked in an order so that we can maintain that forward momentum.
I like what you were just saying about the ask slide. I think that it was important to have the 2022 information there, but I think you could do that in a timeline or in, a traction slide. But I like, detailing out use of funds, where your milestones are going to be, and, with that ask. And then I may have missed it, but was there a valuation you had pegged to this at this point, or you were doing a safe? Were there terms that you gave?
No, we did not. We kind of were going to let the market value us.
Okay.
So
that's fair enough. When you get a lead investor, obviously you can put that in. Here's the terms. We're doing a $1 million safe at a $5 million cap or whatever. So that just gives us an idea of where you're at. In order to, because we could go into this, okay, sure, this looks good, but if you're asking for a $20 million valuation at this stage, that might be high, or if it's $4 million, it might be low. Who knows?
Okay.
Agreed. All right.
Thank you, guys. This is I mean, I can't wait to be able to rewatch this with my team,
Totally.
and go through this. This is very valuable for us. I appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, and one more thing that I'll add. You've got a beautiful way. A lot of times I recommend putting the market later. And maybe what might make sense, again, it just depends on the deck, is to put your market assessment earlier on. Because you were a consultant, sometimes it's easier to say, I've spent 16 years in this industry. I've worked with all these brands. These brands are missing these things, right? Like, and that might be a way of doing it. I'm not saying it's the right way. I'm just saying you can get the market assessment done earlier. I find matrices like you have, like, I know you got a consulting background and everyone loves them, but sometimes they might not work the way that you want. And in this case, it could, right? Look, these only solve these ones partly, and so we wanted to combine them in a better solution. And so here's what our solution looks like. That might be a way of doing it too. Something to think about.
And
Awesome.
I had one last thing as well. I may have, this was a little confusing to me, but I saw on one of the slides, I think your financial slides, you had, I think it was like 1.4 million in 2023 in ARR. And then on the final slide, I think you were saying we're going to use $1 million to get to 2.4 million ARR or something like that, 2.3 or. So I wasn't sure if those were the same or if I just missed some of that. Where do you project to get to at the end of 2023 if you raise the $1 million?
So it is about that 2.4 million. The 1.4 was enterprise, and just below that, I guess I should have showed that better, was the owner operator that
Oh,
would equate into that.
okay. So you had an additional almost $1 million in owner operator in 2023. So next year, okay, gotcha. That makes
That's
sense.
correct.
Okay. Nope, good clarification.
Cool. Oh, one more thing. I just thought about this. You used 1% in your market of the enterprise, and then
Uh-huh.
you used 25% in your the owner operator. Is there a reason for that? Like, why the difference? Why not use 1% for both?
Because the owner operator, there really isn't anything tailored to them right now. And our go-to-market strategy, I guess, like you said, if we broke it out, I could probably talk to that better. But our go-to-market strategy is with strategic contacts that we have to be able to go into these logistics companies, such as Amazon. We have contacts that can get us into the door with Amazon, Swift, CR England, and those companies. And just right off the bat, by striking a deal with them and making it to where any of their carriers are needing to use the app, we'll be able to capture a large percentage of the market just in that one quick swoop.
Of the owner operator market?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, I think work that into the story somehow. Because if you told me you're going to, because typically what people are typically trying to say is we're going to capture 25% of the market over some period of time. That's a huge percentage of the market, right? So we would say that you might not even get 1% of the market over 5 years, right? So just keep in mind those numbers because you're trying to reduce red flags is really what you're trying to do. And so like you can even not bring it up, right? You could even just say like, look, the market for enterprise is, 90 billion and then owner operators is 700 million. It's still a worthwhile play. And we don't need to know, you don't know how much you're going to capture, but it's worth knowing how big that market is if you got the whole thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense? So by throwing the 25, you're like, where did that number come from? Like, why did you say that?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I'll better put that into the story.
Yeah, cool. Well, cool. Well, it comes down to the final question. Based off of what we heard today, Jeff, would you take this company on to due diligence?
Okay, so this is interesting because I think I learn about myself sometimes in these as well, these presentations. But I'm learning how much traction really does mean to an investor. And because of the traction, I was ready to say, up until about the last 2 minutes that, that you're too early. I want to see once you've got this next piece developed and everything else, where it goes. What pushed over the edge for me was when you brought up your financials and you showed that you have actual traction, $236,000 in ARR right now, and that you've got a line of sight to get to what I thought was 1.4, which would be great on the enterprise side, and then an additional 1 million or whatever on the owner operator side. Those things say I want to dig a little bit deeper, and I think there's something here. So I would put this into let's go to due diligence and take a deeper dive. And I guess the learning point for founders out there is how important that is when you've got traction. That's what swung it for me, anyways, to say I want to take another look here because of the traction that you already have. So maybe they take that into consideration in your presentation as well.
Great, thank you.
So it's a yes.
Yeah. We don't give those out very often, so that's great. I'm in agreeing with Jeff here. I'd actually really like to learn more about this. And I would like to send it to some people, right? I think that's a big deal for us. Like, we don't talk about that very often on the show, but like, I think like highlighting that traction is really, really important. I mean, you did a lot with only 100K, right? So that shows that you're scrappy, you don't waste money, you know how to sell. And like Jeff mentioned, we didn't know that to the very last slide, and it was kind of hidden, but it's so important, especially in, I'm going to call it middle of USA investors. They're really looking for traction. Some other people, maybe not. Maybe people in your industry, maybe not, because they might know a little bit more. But when you're talking to a generalized audience, like Jeff and I are, we have investments all over the place, and we don't know anything about anything. So I'll speak for myself. I don't know anything about anything, but but the truth is I like people and I like ideas. And so when you're like, look, we can sell into this thing, we know how to make money, like it just changes the entire dynamic, because we can figure out the problem and stuff like that later. But I think two areas that I would, because again, like a lot of these, this would be a first meeting or maybe even a second meeting. And so if we were to take you to like a general meeting, like if I brought you in front of a group, I would ask you to fix some of these things, really clean up the problem statement, the solutions, okay, but really bring that traction out. And I think it would go much better if we were talking to a group of people. So I'd love to take you on. And like I said, I'd like to make some introductions as well. And so great job overall. And I don't think you're that far off from really at least communicating the business properly.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
I mean, even though, I think Tim and I both said, we could work on the team a little bit. There were things that overcame that. A lot of times I can see just the opposite, where a strong team will come in and make up the difference if they don't have quite that, enough traction. But here, I think it was the fact that you've got a lot of experience, you understand the problem, and then you have been selling to customers already. That's what kind of got it over the line there.
Yep.
Awesome. Again, this is so valuable. So I'm honored that you guys invited us on. I mean, Jeff, we barely talked to you before, and you told us about this. And so, Tim, we've taken to what you said in your book, and we've tried to apply it. And now we'll rearrange some and definitely take those pointers.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Tyler. This was great. If you're out there and you need help with your pitch decks, please apply. We love meeting founders, love doing this. If you need help with your financials, check out Forecasters. There's a link in the description. You can get a 25% discount. And it's such a great tool. They're growing and doing amazing things. So thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks, everyone.